The sun, a molten coin in the vast bleached sky, beat down on Elias Thorne. Each ray felt like a hammer blow, echoing the dull ache in his chest. He was an old rancher, his hands gnarled like ancient oak roots, his face a road map of hard years and harder decisions. Today, the map was leading him to an ending he'd dreaded for months. The sale of his land, his ranch, the only home he'd ever known, the place where his own father had first broken ground. It wasn't just dirt and fences. It was the repository of his entire life. Every sunrise he had greeted, every storm he had weathered, every joy and every sorrow had been witnessed by these rolling hills and silent valleys. Decades of sweat, toil, and unwavering dedication were literally embedded in the soil. Yet here he stood, a spectator at his own dispersal. The auctioneer's voice, amplified and sharp, sliced through the otherwise hushed, expectant air. It was a sound that felt alien, invasive, a sonic invasion of his most private sanctuary. Buyers, a sea of unfamiliar faces, moved with an unsettling eagerness, their eyes scanning the horizon, calculating profit margins, not appreciating the history. They were here for the acreage, the potential, the future value, blind to the past that Elias held so dear. He stood apart, a solitary figure against the sweeping landscape, his heart a hollow cavity, the echo of loss already deafening. This was the culmination of a battle he had fought long and hard, a battle against time, against mounting debt, against the sheer, unyielding pressure of modern life that seemed to swallow up places like his. He'd held on as long as he could, a stubborn oak resisting the wind, but eventually, even the strongest roots can be forced to yield. The decision had been agonizing, a slow bleed of hope, but it was made. The ranch was going. As the first bids began to echo across the dry earth, a subtle shift in the periphery, a flicker of movement at the far edge of the gathering crowd drew Elias's gaze. It was a horse, not one of his, not one belonging to any neighbor. This was a creature of the wild, a magnificent roan with a mane like a storm cloud and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the plains. He'd seen it before, a fleeting shadow on the distant ridges, a ghost of the untamed spirit that still clung to the wilder corners of his property. But never this close, never with such presence. The horse, with a startling, almost regal confidence, began to trot into the heart of the gathering. It moved with an innate grace, its hooves kicking up small puffs of dust that seemed to dance in the harsh sunlight. It positioned itself deliberately, a living barrier, right between Elias and the imposing auctioneer's podium. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling through their ranks. A stray horse, bold enough to interrupt an auction. It was an unusual spectacle, a momentary curiosity, but no one present could have grasped the true significance of this unexpected intrusion. The auctioneer, a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of the proceedings, faltered. His booming voice trailed off into an uncertain cough. He gestured vaguely, trying to shoo the animal away, a patronizing wave of his hand, but the roan was unmoved. It stood its ground with an almost defiant stillness, its powerful frame radiating in quiet authority. It was as if the horse possessed an uncanny understanding of the gravity of the moment, as if it had been drawn here by an invisible thread, a silent observer with a crucial role to play. Elias watched, a strange and unfamiliar sensation unfurling within him. He had always felt a deep, almost primal connection to the wild creatures that shared his land, a silent kinship forged over years of observation and respect. But this felt different. This felt profound, imbued with a sense of purpose that transcended mere coincidence. The horse began to paw the ground, a soft rhythmic thudding that seemed to deepen the sudden, unnerving silence. Each strike of its hoof on the earth felt like a measured beat, a drum roll building an invisible tension. Then, with a fluid, almost imperceptible shift, the roan turned its head. Its dark, intelligent eyes locked directly onto Elias Thorne. In that shared gaze, a dam that Elias hadn't even realized existed began to crumble. A flood of memories, long buried beneath the weight of practical concerns and financial worries, surged to the surface. He remembered a promise made years ago under a sky ablaze with stars, a promise inextricably linked to this land, to its wild inhabitants, and to the very spirit of freedom it embodied. He remembered a time when this ranch was more than just a business, more than just a property. It had been a sanctuary, a refuge, a place where the wild heart of the land beat strong and free. The horse let out a soft whinny, a sound that was not a cry of distress, but a resonant call, a clear note that seemed to carry across the vastness of time and space. It was a reminder, a gentle but insistent nudge of what Elias was about to surrender. It wasn't merely acres of land he was signing away. It was a legacy, a heritage, a connection to something ancient and enduring. And this stray, this embodiment of untamed spirit, had just delivered that reminder in the most unexpected, the most profound manner imaginable. The future of the ranch, the future of Elias himself, now seemed to hang suspended in the crucible of this moment, balanced precariously between the weight of his past decisions and the silent, compelling plea of a wild horse. The air crackled with unspoken questions. Why was this horse here? What did it want? And what could it possibly do to alter the course of events? Elias felt a stir of something he hadn't felt in years, a flicker of defiance, a whisper of hope, born from the most unlikely of encounters. The horse remained, a steadfast sentinel, its presence a quiet challenge to the proceedings. It was a living symbol of everything Elias had cherished and fought to protect. As the auctioneer cleared his throat, preparing to resume, Elias's gaze never left the roan. A slow, dawning realization spread through him. Perhaps this wasn't an ending at all. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was the beginning of something entirely new. The horse's tail swished, a gentle ripple against its powerful flanks. Its eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to bore into Elias's soul, urging him to remember, to resist, to reclaim. The land wasn't just his to sell. It was a trust, a responsibility he had inadvertently neglected. The auction, once a symbol of his failure, now felt like an opportunity, a second chance delivered by the most unexpected of messengers. Elias took a deep breath, the dry air filling his lungs, not with despair, but with a newfound resolve. The warmth of the sun suddenly felt less oppressive, more like a comforting embrace. The distant mountains seemed to stand a little taller, their peaks sharp against the impossibly blue sky, as if watching, waiting. The buyers, their faces a mixture of impatience and bemusement, were oblivious to the silent drama unfolding between man and beast. They saw only a horse, a minor inconvenience. Elias saw a guardian, a prophet, a living testament to the enduring spirit of his ranch. The roan took a step closer to Elias, its muzzle nudging gently against his worn denim sleeve. It was a gesture of connection, of solidarity. Elias reached out, his calloused fingers finding the coarse, strong hair of its neck. The simple touch sent a jolt of energy through him, a current of life that had been dormant for too long. He felt the warmth of the animal's body, the steady beat of its heart against his hand. It was a tangible reminder of the vibrant living heart of this place, a heart he had almost allowed to be extinguished. He looked around at the faces in the crowd, their expressions a blend of impatience and mild amusement. They saw a rancher being distracted by an animal. They couldn't see the deep, almost spiritual conversation taking place. They couldn't comprehend the weight of history, the power of promises, or the profound connection between a man and the land he had dedicated his life to. The auctioneer cleared his throat again, a more insistent sound this time. The buyers shifted their feet, eager to get the proceedings back on track, but the roan held its ground, a silent, immovable force. Elias felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected visitor. It had arrived not a moment too soon. It had delivered him from the brink of a final, irreversible mistake. The weight on his shoulders began to lift, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. He wasn't just Elias Thorne, the old rancher who had lost his land. He was Elias Thorne, the steward of this place, the protector of its wild soul. The horse whinnied again, a soft, encouraging sound. It turned its head slightly, as if to survey the land, then looked back at Elias, its eyes conveying a silent message. "This is ours. We must protect it." Elias nodded, a barely perceptible movement, but a profound commitment. The auctioneer, noticing Elias's renewed attention, saw his chance. "Mr. Thorne, are we ready to continue?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of impatience. Elias looked at the auctioneer, then at the horse beside him, a symbol of hope and resilience. A slow smile spread across his weathered face, a smile that held the promise of a new dawn. "No," Elias said, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the expectant silence. "No, I don't think we are." The words hung in the air, a bold declaration that silenced the crowd. The stray horse stood beside him, a silent witness. Its presence an undeniable affirmation. The auction, Elias knew, was far from over. It had just taken a very unexpected turn. The old rancher had been ready to let go, but a stray horse had reminded him of what truly mattered, igniting a spark of determination that had been dormant for years. The land was more than just property. It was a promise, a legacy, a wild and beautiful place that deserved to be fought for. The roan nudged his hand again, a gentle reminder of the shared purpose. Elias Thorne, the man who was about to sell his soul, had just been given a second chance, delivered by the wind and the wild heart of his own land. The auction was halted, the buyers confused, and Elias, standing beside his unlikely ally, felt the first stirrings of hope in a long, long time. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning to unfold, a testament to the unexpected bonds that can form between humans and the wild, and the power of a single moment to change everything. The auctioneer, a man named Jed, blinked, clearly thrown. His professional smile wavered, replaced by a look of mild annoyance. "Mr. Thorne," he began, his voice regaining its practiced boom, but lacking its earlier conviction. "I understand this is a difficult day, but the auction has commenced. We have bidders, eager to make their offers. Perhaps you could address the horse later?" Elias Thorne, however, wasn't listening to Jed. His gaze remained fixed on the roan horse, a silent dialogue passing between them. The animal stood with an unshakable calm, its presence a bulwark against the tide of commerce threatening to sweep Elias's life away. Elias, slowly, deliberately, reached out and patted the horse's neck. The rough, warm hair felt incredibly grounding. It was a gesture that spoke volumes to anyone who understood the language of the land. "Jed," Elias said, his voice carrying a new resonance, a quiet strength that surprised even himself. "This horse, it ain't just a stray." He paused, letting the words settle. The crowd was silent, their attention now divided between the peculiar animal and the resolute rancher. "This horse," Elias continued, his voice gaining momentum, "is a reminder of what this land truly is." He turned slightly, addressing the assembled buyers and onlookers. His eyes, usually downcast or clouded with worry, now held a sharp, clear light. "See this land? You see the fences, the fields, the ranch house. You see it as property, as an investment. And I was ready to let you see it that way too. I was ready to sign it all away." He gestured towards the horse. "But she," he nodded at the roan, She reminded me of a promise." The story of that promise and of Elias's life on the ranch began to unfold, not in a measured, narrative way, but in fragments, in evocative snapshots, as if Elias were piecing together a forgotten truth. He spoke of his father, a man who had believed in this land not just for its bounty, but for its spirit. His father had been a man of the old ways, a man who respected the wild, who understood that the land was not something to be owned, but something to be stewarded. He remembered his father telling him, when Elias was just a boy, that some parts of the ranch were special. Not special because they were more fertile or easier to work, but special because they were wild, untouched, places where the deer still roamed freely, where the eagles nested, where the very air felt different, cleaner, older. "My father," Elias murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He always said there was a magic to this place. He'd take me out to the back 40, to the canyons where the wind howled like a wolf. He'd tell me, Elias, this land has a soul. You got to listen to it. You got to protect it. Elias's hand tightened on the horse's mane. He made me promise. He made me promise that I'd never let it all be tamed, not completely. That I'd always leave a corner for the wild, for the creatures that belonged here long before any fences were put up. The roan whinnied softly, as if in agreement, nudging Elias's hand again. It was a sound that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath them. Elias looked at the horse, his expression softening. He remembered the first time he'd truly noticed this particular horse. It had been a few months ago, a brief sighting on the ridgeline, a flash of movement against the setting sun. He'd been feeling particularly low then, wrestling with the mounting debts, the endless bills, the gnawing sense of failure. He'd seen the horse, and for a fleeting moment felt a kinship. It was as wild and untamed as his own spirit had once been, before life had started to chip away at him. He'd seen it a few more times since then, always at a distance, a wild, independent creature living by its own rules, a symbol of the very freedom Elias felt he was losing. He'd sometimes leave out a bucket of water near the back fence, a silent offering. He never expected the horse to come to him, not like this, not today, not at his auction. I forgot, Elias admitted, the words a raw confession. I got caught up in the bills, in the worry. I started to see this land as just a problem, something to be sold off to solve my troubles. I stopped listening. I stopped seeing the magic. He looked around at the faces, some sympathetic, some impatient, some utterly bewildered. But she, he said, gently stroking the roan's neck, she didn't forget. She came here today to remind me of my father's promise, to remind me of what I owe this place. He took a deep breath, the dust and heat filling his lungs, but now it felt invigorating. I can't sell this land, not all of it, not like this, not when I remember why it was important, not when I remember the promise. He looked directly at Jed, the auctioneer, his resolve firm. Jed, the auction. It has to stop. I made a mistake agreeing to it. I can't go through with selling the whole spread. Jed stared at Elias, his mouth slightly ajar. Mr. Thorne, that's not possible. The auction has started. You signed the papers. He gestured vaguely towards a table where legal documents lay. The bidders are here. We can't just stop. We can, Elias stated, his voice unwavering. He patted the roan's neck again, a gesture of deep connection. This horse, she showed me something today. She reminded me that some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth fighting for. He looked at the horse, and a genuine, heartfelt smile touched his lips. She came to save the ranch, and in doing so, she might have saved me too. He began to speak about specific parts of the land, the areas his father had always called sacred. He described the hidden spring that never ran dry, the ancient grove of cottonwood trees, the sheer rock faces where falcons nested. He painted a picture, not of assets, but of a living, breathing ecosystem, a sanctuary that had been entrusted to him. He spoke of the joy he used to feel, simply riding through those wilder sections, observing the life that thrived there, undisturbed. He spoke of the peace he found in the quiet solitude, a peace that no amount of money could ever replace. My father called it the heart of the ranch, Elias explained, his voice growing stronger with each word. The part where the wild things truly lived. He said if you ever lost that, you lost the ranch itself, no matter how many acres you still owned. And I was about to lose it all. I was about to trade the heart for a handful of dollars. He shook his head, a sense of profound regret washing over him, quickly followed by a wave of determination. No more. I won't do it. He turned to the crowd again. I understand some of you came here to buy land, to build, to farm, and I respect that. But I can't sell you this, not the heart of it. I will sell some of the outlying sections, the the ones that have already been parcelled off in my mind, the ones that don't touch the sacred ground. But the core of this ranch, the wild parts, the parts my father loved, they stay. They stay with me. They stay for the wild. He looked at Jed, his eyes clear and resolute. Jed, you can auction off the parcels, but the central acreage, the canyons, the old grove, that stays. I won't sign that part away. Jed looked flustered. He glanced at the serious faces of the bidders, then back at Elias, whose unexpected stand, bolstered by the presence of the roan horse, had shifted the entire atmosphere. The raw emotion and deeply held conviction in Elias's voice were undeniable. This wasn't just a rancher having second thoughts. This was a man reconnecting with his roots, with his promises. The horse, a silent, stoic witness, seemed to lend an almost mystical weight to Elias's words. The buyers exchanged uncertain glances. Some looked annoyed, their business plans disrupted. Others, however, seemed intrigued, perhaps even touched by the sincerity of Elias's declaration. The story of the stray horse, the promise to his father, and the sudden, unexpected defiance had captured their attention in a way the auctioneer's practiced patter never could. Elias felt a shift in the air, a subtle change in the energy of the crowd. The initial disappointment was beginning to be replaced by a different kind of curiosity, a respect for a man standing up for something he believed in, even if it meant defying a contract and a planned sale. The roan horse shifted its weight, its ears pricked forward, as if listening intently to Elias's words, a silent affirmation of his decision. The sun still beat down, but for Elias, the heat no longer felt like a burden. It felt like the warmth of a truth finally embraced. He had been about to give up everything, but a wild creature had reminded him of the true value of his inheritance, sparking a fire within him that he thought had long been extinguished. The auction might continue, but for Elias Thorne, the true sale, the one that mattered most, had just been called off. He had chosen his heart over his hardship, his legacy over his losses, all thanks to a stray horse and a forgotten promise. The central acreage, the heart of his ranch, would remain wild, a sanctuary for both creatures and memories. It was a bold decision, one that would undoubtedly bring new challenges. But as Elias looked at the roan, he knew it was the right one. This was more than just land. It was a sacred trust, and he would be its guardian once more. The air at the auction changed. It was no longer just about dollars and cents. It was about respect, about history, about the wild heart of a place. Elias Thorne, standing firm beside the roan horse, had brought that shift about. The auctioneer, Jed, after a moment of stunned silence and a quick, hushed consultation with his assistants, nodded slowly. He understood when a tide had turned, when a story had taken precedence over a sale. "All right," Jed announced, his voice softer now, more measured. "Mr. Thorne has made his position clear. We will proceed with the auction of the outlying parcels as planned. The central acreage, the canyons, the grove. That land remains with Mr. Thorne." He looked directly at Elias. "A commendable decision, sir. A testament to your father's legacy." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Some buyers, who had their sights set on the prime central land, packed up their belongings, their disappointment evident. But others remained. They were the ones who had been more interested in the smaller plots. Or perhaps, like Elias, they had been quietly moved by his unexpected stand. They stayed to bid on the parcels Elias was willing to sell, land that was still part of the ranch's story, but not its untamed soul. The auction continued, but with a different tone. Elias, still with the roan horse calmly by his side, watched as the bidding for the smaller plots unfolded. He felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had lost some of what he'd planned to sell, but he had saved what truly mattered. He had honored his father's promise. He had listened to the land, and he had found an unexpected ally in a creature of the wild. As the last parcel was sold, Elias Thorne turned to the roan horse. He reached out and scratched it, behind the ears, a gesture of deep gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved it all." The horse nudged him gently, its dark eyes seeming to hold a depth of understanding. It was a connection forged in a moment of crisis, a bond between a man and a wild spirit, a silent agreement to protect what was precious. Elias knew his life wouldn't suddenly become easy. The financial challenges hadn't vanished, but now he faced them with a renewed purpose, a clear conscience, and a deep sense of belonging. He wasn't just a rancher trying to survive. He was a steward, a protector. The wild heart of his ranch would continue to beat thanks to a promise remembered and a stray horse that dared to intervene. The story of Elias Thorne and the roan horse became a legend in the valley, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't for sale. What do you think of Elias's decision? Do you believe in the power of promises and the wisdom of the wild? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to hear more incredible stories of courage, connection, and unexpected heroes, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Your support helps us continue to share these inspiring tales. Thank you for watching.